All right. I think we could start. So, again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our first episode of our Salesforce MVP series. And today we are glad to have Steve Mo as one of the first, as our first guest on this program. Just a little bit of a background of this initiative. So we organized this series so that we can have our Salesforce MVPs talk to our Trailblazers here in the Philippines and to inspire them to learn more about Salesforce and probably one day to aspire to become one of the Salesforce MVPs. Um, I would like to introduce myself as well. I'm Neil Buen. I'm the country lead of the Salesforce community here in the Philippines. I'm a Salesforce MVP as well this year. I'm a new one. And yeah, I hope you will enjoy this. I'm sure you'll be asking a lot of questions. Feel free to put that on our chat box. Take it away, Joey.
Hi, I'm Joey. Nice to have you, all of you. And then I've been with the Salesforce ecosystem for around 11 years now. Definitely, I've been seeing a lot of Steve Mo's posts. So definitely, Steve Mo is one of the people that we all look up to within the Salesforce ecosystem, right? So we're really glad to have Steve Mo here. I'm sure there's Steve Mo doesn't really need a lot of introduction anymore, right? So I'll just hand it off to you, Steve.
Oh, thanks.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah. We just hope this works. I was doing one of these for the virtual dreaming presentation, and I was about maybe 10 minutes or so into my slides, and then somebody let me know that they couldn't see the slide that I was on. So hopefully this one works a little bit better than that. So let me share my screen and let me figure out how to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. All right. I think I got this figured out. Can everybody see my title slide?
Yeah.
There you go.
Awesome. All right. We're off to a good start. All right. So thanks, everyone, for having me. I know Joey's been trying to make this happen for a long time. We finally got like the date and the time that would work for all of us. And I just, really glad to be here and share some of the stuff with you guys. So tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm also a member of the nonprofit Power of Us Hub. And I last year finally made it to Trailhead Ranger. I finally got my 100th Trailhead badge after about 6 or 7 years. Or if any of you guys know Jennifer Lee, she just got her 1,000th Trailhead badge yesterday. So that's like a slow week for her getting 100 badges. I'm also a community college dropout, or as a buddy of mine used to refer to it as daycare for 18 to 24-year-olds, and I'm a self-taught Salesforce admin. I've been with the same company for 25 years now, and back in 2003, I was working as a Lotus Domino developer, and one day in a team meeting, my boss mentioned that sales operations was getting this thing called Salesforce, and he pointed at me and said, all right, we're going to learn it, and then you're going to own it. And ever since then, I've been the lead Salesforce admin, developer, janitor, whatever they need me to be that day. And I'm also a world record holder. I hold the world record for the most times that a presenter at Dreamforce has said the word fuck during their presentation. The previous record was 0, held by every other Dreamforce presenter before or since me. So Salesforce has told me, if you've ever been to Dreamforce, they have the safe harbor slide. And so Salesforce has told me I need to have my own safe harbor slide now. I'll try to keep it rated G. So I want to share some of my favorite formulas that I've written over the years. A lot of them have come from questions that were posted in the answers community. And a lot of them, I then, within a week, a month or so, I ended up having to use these exact same formulas in my own org. And so I want to share some of them with you. This is the first one I want to share with you. This is, without a doubt, the most complicated formula I've ever built. Somebody in the answers community posted a question. They needed a formula that would calculate the percent of business days lapsed and remaining in the current month so that they could do prorated invoicing. And this is the formula that I built for them. And next to it is, that's not fake, that's a real thing. That's a knife called a Victorinox Swiss Champ VATX. It's got 84 blades. It weighs about a pound and it costs $450. And this is my favorite formula in the whole world. And I didn't write this one. This formula is called the Power of One. And it's the greatest formula, in my opinion, that's ever been written. It was written by a guy from Salesforce named Tom Tobin. And I learned it in an analytics workshop that he was teaching. And I use this formula every day. I use it on every standard and custom object. When I create a custom object, it's the first custom field I add to that object. And next to it is my favorite pocket knife. It opens bottles of beer, it opens bottles of wine, and I use it every single day. And the formulas and tricks that I'm going to show you are like this pocket knife. They're not like the $450 pocket knife that weighs almost a pound. How many people need a formula like that first one? How many people need a $450 pocket knife that barely fits in their pocket? So I'm going to show you how to use some basic math to simplify some formulas, how to create some formula fields that will allow you and your users to run dynamic reports, a formula that will return the ultimate parent account in a multi-level account hierarchy, and a little trick that I stumbled onto that allows me to test validation rule formula logic, and fabulous prizes. So the first formula I want to show you is something where I just used basic math to simplify an otherwise complex formula. And it came from a question that was posted in the answers community. The question was posted by this guy named Bart Wood. And Bart was trying to create a validation rule that would prevent his users from selecting a previous stage in the sales process. See, for Bart's company, the stages were like milestones. A deal could only move forward until it was either closed won or closed lost. It couldn't go backwards. A deal couldn't be cultivated, proposal submitted, contract negotiation, then go back to cultivation. A deal could only move forward to closed won or closed lost. And you can see he actually posted his first attempt at writing this validation rule. And he was using a function called isPickVal. And you can also see that he had 17 different stages in his sales process. I guarantee that he would have either hit the compile size limit, the character limit, or died of carpal tunnel syndrome before he got done writing this thing using if isPickVal. So I used another function called case, a function called prior value, and a less than mathematical operator. Now, Bart was using isPickVal, and it's a perfectly fine function. It's purpose-built to evaluate a pick list field, look for a value in that field, and then perform an action or return a result if it finds the value you're looking for. But you can see that it's not the most efficient way to write a formula. If you got a pick list field, and you got a big long list of pick list values like Bart did, you've got to write a separate isPickVal for each value you're looking for and each action you want to provide, you want to perform. It's like asking your Alexa, what's it like outside? Are there zombies? Okay, run. Alexa, what's it like outside? Is it hot? Okay, we'll go to the beach. Alexa, what's it like outside? Is it warm? We're going to go hiking. Now, the case function behaves a lot like isPickVal, but it's much more efficient. You bring the entire list of values you're looking for and the entire list of actions you want to perform, and you make a single call to the field. So here's the formula that I wrote. And actually, like, Bart had so many stages, I could not fit all of them in a single PowerPoint slide. he had 17 stages. Even using like 2-point font, I couldn't fit them all in one slide. So to simplify things for the presentation, I narrowed it down to just 7 stages. But looking at the formula, I use the case function. I insert the stage pick list field from the opportunity record. And as an admin, you have access to the entire list of values in that pick list field. So you can literally copy and paste them into your formula, wrap quotation marks around them. And all I'm doing is taking the first pick list value in the stage field and turning that into the number 1. I'm taking the second value in the pick list field and turning it into the number 2. I'm taking the third value and turning it into the number 3. And I keep on doing that until I get to the very end, and I make closed won and closed lost both equal to the highest number because they are the final stage. Then when I finished closing out that case statement, I literally just copied and pasted what I had just written back into the formula. But in my second case function, I wrapped a prior value function around the stage name, and I converted the previously selected stage into a number. That's all I'm doing. I'm turning words into numbers. And then in between my 2 case statements, I just inserted a less than mathematical operator. That's all I'm doing. I'm turning words into numbers and doing basic math. I may have flunked out of community college, but even I know that 1 is less than 2, 3, and 4, and 2 is less than 3, 4, and 5. And the cool thing about this is this question has come up again and again and again on the Answers community, but with slightly different requirements. Maybe it's not opportunity stage, maybe it's case status or lead status. Or somebody one time posted a question, they were trying to create a validation rule that would prevent users from skipping over stages. I took the exact same formula and I turned the less than sign into a greater than sign. And at the very end of the second case statement, I just added the number, I just added plus and the number 1. Now the users can't advance the deal more than 1 stage ahead of the previously selected stage. That's all I'm doing. I'm turning words into numbers and doing basic math. So this next one, I created some formula fields that allowed me to create dynamic reports that me and my users never have to edit. And the first one, just like Bart's validation rule, came from a question that was posted in the Answers community. Now, this one came from a woman named Sophie Curtis. And Sophie had kind of a unique process where she worked. At her company, she had users whose job was to create activities and assign them to other users. But those users then needed to run a report or a list view and check on the status of those activities that they had created and reassigned to other people. And if you've ever created a report or a list view, there's those canned filters in the report builder. My leads, my accounts, my opportunities, my cases, my contacts. She wanted something like that. But the problem is the me and my in those report filters is the user who owns the record. And in her case, these people didn't own that record anymore. They created it, but they transferred it to someone else. So the My Activities list view or My Activities report filter would not work for her anymore. And she didn't want to have to create a separate report or list view for every single person and then manually edit the filter criteria to created by equals Joey, created by equals Mary, created by equals Mike. And then a month later, when they add a new custom field to the object, she's got to add that new custom field to 10, 20, 30 different reports. Or if they decide to change the chart on the report from a bar chart to a donut chart or a funnel, she's going to edit 20, 30 reports just to change the chart on every single one of them. She wanted a dynamic report or a dynamic list view that any user could run, and it would only return the activities that they created, whether they still own the activities or not. So to solve this, I created a custom field on the object. I selected formula as my data type, and checkbox as my result type. But if you look carefully at the question that Sophie posted and the answer that I originally posted, this was back in 2011. Formulas that returned a checkbox result were not even a thing back then. So my original version of this formula returned a number, and it returned either a 1 or a null or a 1 or a 0. But then a couple of years later, along came formula checkboxes, and I personally love checkboxes, so I updated the formula. So I evaluated a standard field on every object created by ID and a thing called $user ID, and I used an equals mathematic operator. So if you ever create a formula, whether it's a validation rule, a formula field, a workflow rule trigger, approval process entry criteria, process builder trigger, you'll notice that when you click insert field, there's the object you're on, and there's that menu of the fields in that object. But below the object, there's all these things with dollar signs. And one of them is called $user. $user represents the user who is currently logged in at that moment in that session, whatever they are doing in that session, whether it's creating a record, editing a record, running a report, creating a report, looking at a list view, creating a list view. If we were all logged into the exact same org right now, and I'm creating a record, I'm $user. You're editing a record, you're $user. Joey's looking at a report, Joey's $user. We're all $user in that session. So I open up the formula editor and I grabbed $user ID. That is the ID of the user who is logged in at that moment. Then I inserted the created by ID. And in between the two of them, I just put an equal sign. If the ID of the person looking at this report or looking at this list view is equal to the ID that is in the standard created by ID field, then this formula returns a checked checkbox. If they don't match, it returns an unchecked checkbox. Now, a word of advice, no matter how simple you think your formula is or how good you think you are at writing formulas, always create a report or a list view that shows side by side the fields that your formula is evaluating and your formula result. And I can see from my QC list view that every record that I created has a checkbox next to it, whether I'm still the owner of the record or I'm not. And records that I own, but I didn't create, they don't have a checkbox, they have an unchecked checkbox. So now I know that my formula is working. I can now drop this formula into any report, any list view, and use it as my filter criteria. And I'll only see the records that I created. And Joey will only see the records that Joey created. And anybody looking at that report or list view will only see the records that they created using one report or one list view in a simple formula checkbox field. Does anybody have any questions before I keep going?
You guys, you can post your questions on the chat window if you want.
Okay, and we can get to them at the end too. So sure. This next one also came from, again, another question was posted in the Answers community, but this one is really cool because a lot like the formula I wrote for Sophie, within about a month of me writing this formula, I had to do something similar in my own org. But when I wrote this formula, I didn't have to do anything like this, but I wound up using the same technique later on. So this one came from a woman named Kelly Knudsen, and she had a kind of unique requirement, a little bit like Sophie. She wanted to create a dynamic report, but her report was a little bit different. She wanted to create a report that would show her sales from the first of the month up until that day of the month. And she wanted to be able to see side by side, month by month, the sales for the exact same number of days, the previous month, the month before that, the month before that, the month before that. So today we're on June 19th. She wanted to be able to run that report today and see the sales for the first 19 days of June and the first 19 days of May, the first 19 days of April, the first 19 days of March. And then tomorrow, she wanted to see the first 20 days of June, the first 20 days of May, the first 20 days of April, the first 20 days of March, without having to manually edit the date range filter criteria every single time she ran the report. and then have to change the whole thing all over again at the beginning of the next month. She wanted this report to be dynamic. The only thing she wanted to do was press run and see the results. So to solve this, I created a formula field that returns, again, it's just a checkbox. It's either true or it's false. The only field I referenced is the opportunity close date. And the cool thing is this will work with cases, leads, any date field on any object. So I evaluate the close date, and I used a function called day, a function called today, and a less than or equal mathematic operator. Now, if you've never worked with date or date time formulas before, the today function returns the current date. We create a formula field right now in an object, drop in today, left paren, right paren, hit save. We look at that record after we hit save. That formula is going to return June 19th, 2020. And tomorrow we look at the same record, it's going to say June 20th, 2020. And the next day, the same record is going to say June 21st, 2020. It's going to keep going until the end of time, or Mark Benioff unplugs the server that our instance is running on. So the day function evaluates a date field or a date value, and it returns the number of the day component of the year, month, day. It doesn't care what the year is. It doesn't care what the month is. If the close date is April 1st, 2019, and you wrap the day function around the close date field, it's going to give you back the number 1. It's not going to give you back the number 2019. It's not going to give you back the number 4. It's going to give you the number 1. If the opportunity closed on December 31st, 2018, and you wrap day around close date, it's going to give you the number 31. If you take the today function, which is going to give you June 19th, 2018, if the presenter has updated their slides, which I haven't, it's going to, and you wrap the day function around that, it's going to give you the number 19. Unless the presenter hasn't updated their slides, then it's going to give you the number 18. So I created a formula field on the opportunity object. I wrapped a day function around the close date. It's going to give you the number of the opportunity close date. A day function around the today function. And in between the two, I just used a less than or equals operator. Today is June 19th, 2020. Day today is going to give me the 19th, the number 19. If the opportunity closed on April 1st, it's going to give me the number 1. 1 is less than or equal to 19. This formula is going to return a checked checkbox. If the opportunity closed on December 31st, 31 is not less than or equal to 19. It's going to give me an unchecked checkbox, and it's going to keep giving me an unchecked checkbox until I reach the 31st day of the month. Now, the second I hit save, this custom field is now available in every standard opportunity report type, including any existing report that I've already built on a standard opportunity report type. If the report is built on a custom report type, you do have to manually add the newly created field to the custom report type layout. But I'm using a standard opportunity report. There's my month to date field right there in the field list on the left-hand side of the report builder. I simply grab my newly created field, drag it in, add it as a report filter, and set my report filter criteria to true. Now I can run a report and I can get a result that looks like this. I ran this report on the 10th of the month, and I can see side by side, month by month, the sales for the first 10 days of the month. And if I ran this report right now, it would return the sales for the first 19 days of the month, side by side, month by month, without editing a single report filter criteria. And if I ran it a week from now, it's going to show me the sales for the first 23, 24, 25 days of the month. And at the end of the month, it's going to automatically reset back to day 1, day 2, day 3, whenever I run this report, no matter what day it is, no matter what week it is, no matter what month it is, no matter what year it is. I'll never have to touch this report ever again. So, like I said, I built this for Kelly, and then couple of months later, I got a request on my own org. But for Kelly, her business was much more transactional. She wanted to see the numbers on a day-by-day basis. At my org, we have a very long sales cycle. A typical deal from create to closed one takes about 120 days on my org. But they had a similar request. My users wanted to be able to see a report for the year-to-date sales. But again, like Kelly, they wanted to be dynamic. They didn't want to have to edit the report filter criteria. Or actually, I should say, knowing my users, they wouldn't edit the report filter criteria. They would email me and ask me to update the report for them. And I didn't want to have to edit the report filter criteria every time they needed the report run. So I needed to create a dynamic year-to-date report. So I needed to use a formula to evaluate the close date day of the year and compare it to the current day of the year. So kind of like an expanded version of what I built for Kelly. Kelly needed to see compare the close date day to the day of the month. I needed to compare the close date day of the year to the current day of the year. So again, I used a formula field on the opportunity object that returns a checkbox. Again, I used the today function. I used another function called year, which is kind of like a companion of the day function. I used a function called date, and again, a less than or equals mathematic operator. So I knew that to do this, I needed to be able to get the day of, count the number of the day of the year, the number of the day of the number of the current day of the year, and the number of the day of the year that the opportunity closed on. Now, a lot of people, when they first get into date and date time formulas, they get a little bit tripped up because you think you start at the beginning and you end at the end. But to count the duration, you have to flip the two and subtract the start from the end because you're subtracting the lesser value from the greater value. So to get the day of the year, we would subtract January 1st, 2020 from June 19th, 2020. That would give us the number of days that had lapsed from the 1st to the June 19th. So again, we're going to use the today function, which will give us today's date. Year behaves a lot like the day function, but instead of getting the number of the day or the number of the month, it gives us the 4-digit number of the year in that date field or that date value. The date function allows us to build a date value by providing it with the 4-digit year, the 2-digit month, and the 2-digit day. So if we had a date function and we wanted to build a date field using it, we would put in 2020 for the year, 01 for January, 01 for the 1st, and that will give us New Year's Day 2020. For Christmas, we would insert 2020 for the year, 12 for the month, and 25 for the day. And if we wanted to have a formula or return my birthday, we would put in 2020 for the year, 06 for the month, and 11 for the day. But what if we want to make this dynamic? I mean, that's great for this year, but what about next year or the year after that or the year after that? Using the year function and the today function, we can make this dynamic. We know that January 1st is the start of every year, so we can hard code in 01 for January and 01 for day one. Wrapping a year function around the today function will automatically make this date field return January 1st for whatever year today happens to be. And we can do the same thing for Christmas. Hard code in the 12, hard code in the 25, because those things don't change from year to year. And wrapping year around today, this year it's going to return 2020. Next year it's automatically going to return 2021. The year after that, it's automatically going to return 2022. And likewise for my birthday, this thing will automatically update every single year so you guys don't forget my birthday next time. So today will give us, again, I forgot to update my slide, June 19th, 2020. Year today will give us the year 2020. Year wrapped around close date will give us whatever year that opportunity closed. Using year today 0101, that gives us January 1st of this year. whatever year this year happens to be. Wrapping year around close date with 0101 gives us January 1st of whatever year that opportunity closed. So here's our finished formula. We're simply subtracting January 1st of whatever year this opportunity closed from the opportunity close date. That's going to give us the number of the day of the year that this opportunity closed. Then we subtract January 1st of this year from today. That's going to give us the number of the day that today is. And in between them, I have a less than or equals operator, just like I had in the formula for Kelly. So we'll get this, the top half of the formula will give us the number of the day that the opportunity closed, and the bottom half will give us the number of the day that today is in the year. So if the opportunity closed on February 15th, that's day number 45. Today is day number 171. 45 is less than 171. This formula is going to return a true or a checkbox. If the opportunity closed on November 28th, that's day 331. That's not less than or equal to 171. That's going to return a false checkbox, and it's going to keep on returning a false checkbox until we get to November 28th or 29th or 30th. Then automatically, the formula is going to start returning a true checkbox on those records. And again, just like for Kelly, the second we hit save, this field is now available in any existing report. We don't have to start with a brand new report. We can take any existing opportunity report we've already got. There's our year-to-date checkbox field available in the field list. We add that as a report filter. I set the date range to give me all the opportunities for the current year and the previous 2 years, but only give me the opportunities that have a checked or true checkbox. I run my report, and without any of the filter criteria, I can see side by side, year by year, my sales up to and including June 19th. And this report tomorrow will give me my sales for 2018, 19, 20th, up to and including June 20th. And it will automatically update in July, August, September, December, and in January, the whole report will automatically reset back to January 1st and start counting the days again and again and again. And again, I never have to touch this report again, and neither do my users. And then my users don't have to bug me when they need the report to be updated, because the report is automatically updating every single time it's run, no matter what day of the week it is, no matter what week it is, no matter what month it is, no matter what year it is. It's a simple dynamic report built on just a simple formula checkbox field. So this one I call the ultimate parent account, and this one I had to build on my own org. So if you've ever dealt with account hierarchies, that parent account lookup field and the account object, and so you can use it to connect subsidiaries to their parent account and branches to divisions and divisions to the corporate headquarters. You can build like an account tree. But then you run an opportunity pipeline report and you get a mess like this. Octan is the parent of Lego and United Oil and Gas. Lego is the parent of Pyramid Construction. United Oil and Gas has 3 subsidiaries, Singapore, UK, US. But you run an opportunity pipeline report and you try to group it by that parent account field, and you get this train wreck. All the Octan revenue is scattered all over the place. So maybe you try to add a chart to make some sense of it, and you get this. All the Octan revenue is scattered in 4 different stacks. And so hopefully your boss has a calculator that has red, orange, green, yellow, and blue buttons on it. I've got a saying about reports that if you build a report and the person looking at it can't figure out what it means without pulling out a piece of paper and a pencil or a calculator, you built a shitty report. And I don't want to be known as the guy that builds shitty reports. So I had to try and make sense of this mess. Now, to do that, I needed to create a custom field on the account object that would give me the name of the top account in the entire hierarchy, no matter where in the account hierarchy the account that I'm looking at is located. Now, I also have to figure out, what if the account is the top parent account in the hierarchy, or that account has no parent account, or there is no hierarchy at all? So to do that, I created a custom formula field on the account object that returned a text result, the name of the top account. And I used a function called blank value and the parent account name. Now, I can't talk about the blank value function without throwing out a shout out to a guy named Deepak Anand, who, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time in the Ansys community. His stuff is just on another level. He posts stuff that just is incredible, and it's not just the solutions that he comes up with, but he explains his solutions so well and gets into what he did, how he did it, and why he did it. And one day he solved somebody's question, and he did it using the blank value function. But it was in his explanation of how he used blank value and how blank value works that the light bulb finally went off. Because I had seen the blank value function in the field function menu for years. It's one of the oldest functions in the Salesforce catalog. But I couldn't really wrap my head around what I could actually do with this until I saw Deepak's explanation. And then the light bulb went off. So I'll try to do it justice, but I really can't. Basically, the way blank value works is, if you're writing a formula and you're evaluating a field, but the field may or may not have something in it, it might be blank, you can provide a substitute to use in case the field is blank, and the formula can use the substitute instead and keep on functioning. So that's basically blank value in a nutshell. And I knew that, I've got 25,000 accounts on my org. Not every single one of them has a parent account. Some of them have a blank parent account field, and I needed to account for what to do if I find a blank. So I opened up the formula editor, I inserted the blank value function, and then I used the insert field button. Now, when you're in the formula editor and you see a greater than sign next to a field name, that means the field is a lookup, and you can click through that greater than sign into that other object and access the fields in that object. So I started the account object, I found the parent account lookup field, and I clicked through it. Now I'm in the parent account record. I scrolled through the list of fields, and I found the parent account lookup field on the parent account. I clicked through that. I found the parent account lookup field on the parent account, and I clicked through that. And I kept on clicking up and up and up through all those parent account lookup fields. Now, I did some research before I did this, and I found that the highest account hierarchy in my org was 4 levels. So I wanted to build a bit of a buffer. So I went up 6 levels. So I went up, and got the parent account name. But like I said, I don't know which account I'm on. This account may not have a parent account. It might be blank. So I used a blank value function, and I provided a substitute. So I went up 5 levels and got the parent name. But I don't know if there's going to be anything there when I get there. It might also be blank. So I open up another blank value and provide another substitute. And I go up 4 levels. Then I open up another blank value and I go up 3 levels. Then I open another blank value and I go up 2 levels. Then I go up another blank value and I go up 1 level. If I've gone up 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 levels, and I don't find any parent account names, then that means that I'm either on the top account in the hierarchy or there is no hierarchy at all, in which case, just give me the name of the account that I'm on right now. Then I close the whole thing out. This is nothing more than a nested blank value function that just cascades down from the top account all the way down to the account that I'm on. That's it. a nested blank value. Now, just like the other formulas, second I hit save, I can use this field in an existing report. This is the exact same report that we started with. I simply grab the standard parent account field and I swap that out and swap in my newly created ultimate parent account field. And I use that as my report grouping. This is the exact same report we started with. But now all of the Octane revenue is in one nice, neat bucket. And without a piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator, I can see that Octane has $6.9 million in revenue. And I can see Warnham Hogg has $2.7 million in revenue. And Three Stooges, Initech, Midstate Office Supply, they're no longer out in this nameless, faceless, blank group on the report, because they are the top account in the hierarchy. There is no hierarchy. So their account name is displayed in the ultimate parent account column. And I can get a chart that looks like this. And there's the three standalone accounts, Three Stooges, Initech, Midstate, and there's their revenue, no longer in a nameless, faceless bar in the chart. It's grouped just like Midstate, Octane, and Warnham Hogg. So this last one this isn't a formula itself. It's kind of a little trick that I kind of stumbled onto one day. So it's a way to test validation rule formula logic by using a formula checkbox field. So if you've ever created a formula, whether it's a validation rule, formula field, workflow rule, trigger, process, in the formula editor, there's that check syntax button. And so you build your formula, you click check syntax, and hopefully you get the green message instead of the red message. There's no syntax errors in merge fields. You're not using an incorrect function. You're under the 5K compile size. You're not home free. You're only about halfway home, actually, because the check syntax button only evaluates the syntax. It doesn't evaluate the formula logic. And even though I flunked out of community college, even I know that A plus B divided by C and A plus B divided by C, they're both syntactically correct, but they can return completely different and potentially bad results. But there's no check logic button in the Salesforce formula editor. But I was writing a validation rule one day, and it was a little bit complex. There were a lot of ands and ors in it, and wanted to make sure that I didn't have any loopholes in the formula. I also want to make sure that it wasn't too restrictive and was going to block people from saving a record that actually should be allowed to be saved. And so I was updating a lot of records, testing it. And then I kind of stumbled onto this thing that with a validation rule formula, you're really writing a pass-fail criteria. And so you're writing basically the logic for what defines a bad record, the record that you're trying to prevent from being saved. And it's, like I said, it's true, false, pass, fail. Well, another thing that's Boolean is a checkbox. Checkboxes are either true or false, a 0 or 1, wax on, wax off. So I created a custom field on the object that I was writing my validation rule. And I ended up doing this on every single object in my org. I created a formula field that returned a checkbox result. Now, just like a validation rule, true equals fail and false equals pass. So what I did is I created this formula checkbox field and I inserted my validation rule formula into the field. So suppose we wanted to create a validation rule that would prevent people from saving an open opportunity with a close date that's in the past. We would want to evaluate the opportunity stage, the opportunity close date, and today's date. And we would want to prevent people from saving it if the stage was not closed won or closed lost. But we want to exempt records that are closed won and lost because maybe at our company, we've got people in shipping that need to put in a tracking number after the opportunity is closed won, but the close date is come and gone. Or maybe we've got people in accounts receivable that need to edit the opportunity after it's been closed won and after the close date is passed and put in the invoice number or the payment date. Or we've got service support people who we need to put in like a tracking number or something like that. So we only want to invoke this validation rule on open opportunities. So we could write the validation rule like this. If the close date is less than today and the opportunity stage is not closed won or not closed lost, or we could write it like this. I happen to be an and or guy myself, or you could use ampersands and pipes. There's a million different ways you could write this validation rule formula. But before we put this into a validation rule and activate it, what I do is I take my validation rule formula and I put it into my formula checkbox field first. I check the syntax, so I know that I have all my parens and functions in the right place. I've got all my commas in the right place, but I also want to test the logic. So I add this formula to my formula checkbox field, and if this formula returns a true checkbox on a record, that means that that record would fail this validation rule as it's currently written. If the formula returns a false or unchecked checkbox, that means that the record would pass the validation rule, or it means that I might have a loophole in my validation rule. So I hit save after I check the syntax, and then I create a report or a list view that includes all the fields that my formula is evaluating and my validation rule test checkbox side by side. And right away, I can see that I've got a problem. Opportunities that are closed won and closed lost should be exempt from my validation rule. But I've got 3 opportunities that are closed won and closed lost that have a checked checkbox. That means that they would fail if this was a validation rule. The users wouldn't be allowed to edit the closed won opportunity and put in the tracking number. They wouldn't be able to edit the closed opportunity and put in the invoice or the payment date. So does anybody want to take a guess at what I did wrong in my formulas, by the way? There is no prize.
Anybody typing?
Instead of or, I think you should have used and for
We don't want to do
close.
that. That's right.
Close.
That's right. It's the ors. By wrapping an or around the stage name part of the formula, I created a loop from which no closed opportunity could ever escape. When the user selects closed won, they're doomed to fail because they didn't also select closed lost. Because in opportunity stage, it's a single value pick list field. You can only pick one value. You can't pick closed won and closed lost at the same time. But this formula as it's written is expecting you to pick both of them at the same time, which is impossible unless you're Schrodinger's cat. So to fix this, we remove the or and wrap an and around the entire formula. And again, if we were using ampersands, we could write it like this. So now we put our new formula into our validation rule test checkbox. And again, you only need one of these on every object. You only need it to test a validation rule when you're adding a new validation rule or making a change to an existing validation rule. You don't need a separate checkbox for every single validation rule on the object. So I put my updated formula into the checkbox. I check the syntax again. I know that that's good. And again, a true checkbox means the record would fail. A false checkbox means the record would pass. I go back to my QC list view, and the only records that have a checkbox are the 2 records that should have a checkbox. Open opportunities with a close date in the past. So now that I know that my not just my syntax is correct, my logic is correct too. I don't have any loopholes, and my validation rule is not too restrictive. Now, There are a few caveats though. Not every function that's available in a validation rule formula is available in a formula field. You can't use is new in a formula field. You can't use is change. You can't use prior value, and you can't use VLOOKUP. The functions are just not supported in formula fields yet. But if your validation rule, like the ones we were testing with, don't include any of those functions, you can test the whole thing. If they do include those functions, you'll need to comment them out or remove them from the formula, but you could test the rest of your formula logic. And another neat thing about it is on my org, I've got hundreds of thousands of contacts, 20, 30,000 opportunities, 20, 30,000 account records. Using this formula checkbox, I can see in a report how many records will fail or pass my validation rule in real time. I can create an enhanced list view and have all my fields I'm evaluating in my formula and my formula checkbox field, and I can inline edit, dozens of records and hit refresh and see the results. So I can do, large scale testing of a validation rule, not just one record at a time, hit save, see if I trigger it, hit save, see if I trigger it. It's just been a real time saver for me when I write or update a validation rule. So it won't work with every
Hey,
function.
We have a quick question here in relation to that. Would it also work on validation rules with specific profiles or custom settings? For profiles, we can, right?
Yep. So it will respect the profile of. So to test it, you would test it kind of like the way I test any kind of validation rule with a profile exemption or a role exemption. So what I usually do is I'll log in as a user of that profile or role that is either exempt from the rule or that we only want to invoke the rule for. And the checkbox will respect role, profile, user ID, anything like that. So if you're logged in as that user and that user is exempt from that validation rule, if you've written the rule correctly, they'll see an unchecked checkbox on all the records that should pass. And if you're logged in as a user who you want to invoke the rule for, if the rule's written correctly, you're going to see a checkbox for all the records that would fail as the formula is written. So yeah, it will respect user ID, user role, user profile, pretty much any field that can be accessed in a formula field. And that is always a good test too. I mean, like especially any validation rule that calls in user profile, user role should always log in as that role, as both the exempt and the non-exempt roles and profiles. And again, this gives you a way to see in hundreds and thousands of records at a time which records would fail, which records would pass.
Right.
So I do have a little Easter egg. I created an unmanaged package on my dev org of a bunch of the formulas that I showed you here, plus a whole bunch more. There's a link to download it, and there's a password. You can download it into your sandbox or your dev org. There is one little caveat that I stumbled onto. The dev org that I built it on has opportunity historical trending enabled on it. So if you don't have that enabled on your sandbox, you'll either need to turn it on or just go out to Developer Force, get a fresh dev org, activate opportunity historical trending in your dev org and install it in your dev org, and you shouldn't have any problems. And then you can play around with the formulas, If you like them, test them. There's the days and formula to calculate days until close, the validation will test checkbox and all standard objects, a formula to count the days until close, the ultimate parent account is in there, month to date close date is in there, year to date close date is in there, field to give you a nice clean close date quarter. The power of one is in there on all standard objects, plus a bunch of other stuff I've built. Play around with it, and then if you like it, install it in your production org and bust into your Rapino pose.
Mind if we switch back to the previous slide, by the way? All right. I'll share this with.
Oh yeah. Let me. I'll drop it into the chat and I'll shoot you a copy of the deck.
Sure, that works.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Guys, any questions? Neil? So there's a question about leap years on the formulas.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
Using date on formula, would it respect leap years?
Can you give me an example? Like the year-to-date ones?
Melvin, feel free to unmute yourself. And then we also have a question about how to calculate the number of business days in a year.
The number of what dates?
Business days.
Business days. Oh, man. Oh, that's a tough one. Especially, it gets really tricky. It can be done. There are a couple of formulas. There's actually a great link. Let me see if I can hunt it down. Just give me a sec to look it up. Did I lose the Zoom? Ah, crap. Oh, okay. Hold on a sec. Just give me 1 sec to look this up because it's a really great link. Salesforce has a whole page in the online help dedicated to sample date formulas, and they have a formula in there that calculates I'm pretty sure it calculates the number of business days between two dates. So let me just share this link in the chat. And I think there's another one also that they've got. They've got some great examples of.
I found something by Cloud My Biz regarding calculating business days between two dates, but it doesn't take into consideration the holidays, right?
Holidays that's where it gets really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of an easy way to do that because holidays change from year to year. That's I'm trying to think, like, I could have sworn that there's something, like, my org doesn't use cases that much.
Mm-hmm.
I could have sworn that there's something with cases where you can actually build a holiday calendar for your org, and that will be used, but that might just be for the reporting side, like a case life cycle report or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, holidays really calculate things because there's just, they're not the same from year to year.
Right. Yep. Basically need a reference table for it, right?
Exactly. One function that I really use a lot now is called add months. So add months is a great way if you need to do something like, add 1 year to a date field, or add 2, 3, 4 years to a date field, or something like that. And within that date range, there could be a leap year. So you can't, and maybe you need it to be exactly 4 or 5 years ahead. So you can't do something like 365 times 5, or 365 times 0.25, 365.25 times 5. You kind of fudging, like adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because you're not really adding a year. You're adding 365 days, and adding 365 and a quarter days for each year. That's not really that accurate either. So the add months function allows you to take a date field or a date value and add an exact number of months to that date field. And it will automatically calculate if there are any leap days in between that date and when you want to end the thing on. It's a great, great function. Another great function that's relatively new is called weekday. It gets the number from 1 to 7 of the day of the week that a date field or a date value falls on, so that you can do things like, I need to make sure that, this date is 10 business days from this other date. You can find out what day of the week the date is, and then figure out, all right, I've got to add 2 extra days because there's a Saturday, Sunday between this date and that date. Or it's a Saturday, so I need to add 1 extra day to skip the Sunday. There was a way to do it, but it was like really kind of convoluted. You had to subtract a day from a known Sunday way, way, way in the past, and then divide that by 7. And that would give you the number of the day of the week. But it was really wonky. And because of the way the math was written, it was like, if the formula returned the number 0, that meant the day was a Sunday. And if the formula returned a 1, that meant the day was a Monday. And if the formula returned a 6, that meant the day was a Saturday. And that always bugged me, because it's like, there's no day 0. Sunday is day 1, Saturday is day 7. So it always bugged me, though, to see that whenever I'd have to use. But that was the way you had to do it. That was like there was no other solution.
For developers, though, right?
But then a few years ago, Salesforce came up with the weekday function, and it's just like you wrap weekday around a date field, and it gives you. And the nice thing is, it gives you the number 1 to 7, not 0 to 6. So it makes sense. That's the other thing, is like, I'd start to write something, and I'd always have to remember, it's like, wait a minute, is Wednesday day 4 or is Wednesday day 3? Because Sunday is 0. And so it's like, it just made writing everything 10 times harder than it should have been.
Right. We'll leave room for 2 more questions.
Sure.
So there's a question about, when do you use floor?
What's that?
Or when do you use floor? So it's actually the function that removes the decimal places.
So floor will give you the bottom, so it rounds down. So and it's actually in the little package that I built. And that one I'm using it. So floor is like it's the opposite of ceiling. Ceiling rounds everything up. So like, I built this thing to clean up my reports. Like, when you're doing a report, like say like opportunity close date or something like that, in the report builder, you can group a date field like close date. You can select a couple of different options for how to display the date groupings. You can say, all right, group all these days by the month. or group all these days by the year or by the quarter. But the problem is that when you group them by the quarter, Salesforce sticks the year onto the quarter. So instead of just saying Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, it says Q1 2020, Q2 2020, Q3 2020. And so it makes it impossible to, in a single report, display Q1 2020 next to Q1 2019, 2018, 2017. You can't, there's no standard way to group all the quarters together and then all see the year by year difference. So what I ended up building, and a lot of people have done this. I'm not the one who invented this by any means. I just probably redid something that 100 people before me have already done. And of course, I can't get into my dev work right now to copy and paste the formula into the chat. Oh, come on. Ever since I've been working from home, I have had nothing but these like DNX errors.
We're not able to see your screen, by the way.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let me share my screen again. Hopefully it won't be brutally slow. Let me see. Where is that? Okay, present. Now this is the dev work where I build everything. So it's kind of like my mad laboratory. It's got all kinds of piles of junk laying around all over the place. It's got every half-baked idea I've ever come up with, and 99% of them don't work at all. So this is the field that I built, and of course it's not going to display because, let me see. Come on, don't be bashful. There it is. So here I'm using ceiling. Like somebody asked about floor. Here I'm using ceiling. So what I'm basically doing, if it will ever update, month close date gives me the number of the month from 1 to 12 that this opportunity closed. So I'm dividing that by 3. But 1 divided by 3 is 0.333. 2 divided by 3 is 0.667. But I want to round that up to give me the whole number 1. And I want to do the same thing for months 4, 5, and 6. I want those to round up to the number 2. I want 7, 8, and 9 to round up to the number 3. So what this formula is doing is it's taking the month that the opportunity closed, dividing it by 3, and then rounding that up to the nearest whole number. And then in front of that, I'm just sticking the letter Q, so that now I can run a report like this. I may even have one saved. Let me see if I can find a better one than that. Yeah, this one I think will work.
Yep.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, we do have the columns there.
Right. Why is this not? There we go. There we go. All right, let me just change the filter criteria. Yeah, current and previous 2 fiscal years. So now I can get a nice, neat report like this. Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, grouped by the year, side by side, so I can get a report and chart that looks like this.
Great. So right now we're lacking in time, so we may just have to get back to you on the other questions.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. So thank you again for the time, Steve.
No problem.
You've this is something that you're really passionate about, and I'm sure there's so many much more answers there waiting for you, right? Or questions in the answers community. So guys, if you have any questions, the answers community is all there. So we have people around the world that's actually answering questions there. So anything related to Salesforce, make sure to know that we have the answers community. And then now for the next one, we're going to have Seychelles to demo us form assembly.
Yes, hey Joey, thank you so much. How are you?
Yes.
Thanks everyone. Nice to join you. Nice to watch Steve. It's always interesting. Thank you so much for the brief intro. Just to recap, my name is Seychelles and I look after the Philippines clients of Form Assembly and also Asia Pacific more broadly. I'm really glad to be here today connecting with you all, and thank you so much to Neil and Joey for organizing this. I'd also like to say before I kick off, Joey dropped out a form in the chat box to sign up and received an e-gift card, so please jump in there and do that at your leisure. So today what I'd love to do is just give a little bit of an intro to Form Assembly, specifically focusing on our integration with Salesforce. And then I'll jump into a live demo of the platform, see it in action with Salesforce, and then of course open up to any questions. I very much welcome those. So what I'm going to do is, just to get started, I'm going to jump into our introduction and just provide a little bit more information on Form Assembly, a bit more of a background. Please let me know, as with Steve, if you can't see anything that I'm referring to. I'd prefer, you know, not to be talking for a few minutes and not know. So to get started with Form Assembly, a little bit of background about us. We are a web form building and data collection platform. And so our focus is on data hygiene, security, compliance, and of course our integration with Salesforce, which I specifically focus on today. And so Form Assembly's integration with Salesforce allows our customers to streamline, automate, and secure their data collection. We've been a gold partner since 2008. We have thousands of customers. Many of those are Salesforce users. It's quite a large proportion of our customer base. In terms of our Salesforce integration, just to give a bit of an overview, we can create and update any Salesforce records. So we map to both custom and standard objects. We dynamically populate dropdowns, so dynamic pick lists. I'm going to show today as well. We are able to pre-fill forms from Salesforce to streamline the user experience, and we integrate with other iterations of Salesforce like Marketing Cloud. Just to give a bit of a background on some of the common uses, today I'm going to demonstrate web to lead and a survey. Of course, other things like payments, we have payment integrations like PayPal and authorize.net, and some of these other common use cases that you're seeing here, data entry, basically automating that. And we do have regional data hosting available in Asia and actually around the world. So now I'm going to just jump into a demo. Please let me know again if there's anything that you can't see at this time. I'd also like to just say I will move quickly. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and have a bit of fun and move quickly. So as a starting point, just as a summary of the demo, I'm going to pre-fill data in a web to lead form from a contact in Salesforce, and going to show us some skip if logic, so show us how we can create a lead if there's no existing data in Salesforce or any other options, but that's what I'm going to demonstrate today. And then I'm going to, within Salesforce, I'm going to launch a survey from a custom button and just demonstrate how form assembly can be used within Salesforce without even leaving it. Another option too would be to say use workflows to automate surveys after, say, a customer service case is closed. Alrighty, so jumping now into our platform. When you log in, this is what you're going to see. We can see that I've created a whole range of forms. With form assembly, there's no limit on the number of forms you can create, and there's no limit on the number of responses you can collect. So in theory, we could create 1,000 forms, collect 100,000 responses. There's a problem with that. So I have a whole bunch of forms here, and I can activate and archive them. I can sort them. I can tag them by maybe project or by department, all different ways of helping to basically sort through my long list here. If I was starting fresh, I would jump in here and create a new form, but today I've started one for us already. So I'm going to come in here. And again, I do apologize for moving quickly, but I just want to give you a nice little taster, and hopefully it might be interesting to you. So as a starting point here, we can see my page. I've created a web to lead form, just some very simple fields, which I'm going to get into. I can browse the different viewing options as I build out my form and see what it's going to look like, depending on what the user is working from, be it a laptop or mobile, etc. If I jump over to our form properties here, I can adjust sort of the overall width. I can do multi-navigation bars, which I've enabled today. I can also do like a custom contact link at the bottom. Let's say form responders are having difficulty answering a form. You could, redirect them elsewhere, things like that. And I can also drop in custom code. So now getting to the outline of the form, and what I really would love to demonstrate today is how easy form assembly is to use. So depending on, your needs and your background, you don't have to be technical in order to create really great forms. So as an example, I can move, just literally drag and drop different fields within the form. I can do this to everything that we're seeing here. I can also come back here and adjust it. So it's really, really easy. And just super simple to adjust as you go. Jumping in here to themes, we can see today I've applied Hazy Lake. This is just one of the out-of-box themes that we provide. I could jump in here and maybe have a look around, see what else I like. Today I'm going to stick with Hazy Lake, but I could also come in here and customize it to ensure it's in line with your branding. I could drop in some custom CSS here as well, or alternatively, I can come in and create my own entire brand new theme. I can also do customized headings and footers and things like that. So there's a lot that we can do to achieve a really strong looking form. So now what I'd love to do is just show how easy it is to drop in some content. So all of these fields I've added by just selecting a question, grouping them as I see fit. I can add text and I can add predefined content. So let's say I'm on a regular basis adding the same types of fields or content to a form. I can just expedite that process by coming to my predefined content, which I can actually create my own, and dropping that in there. So that's just to create a really good form building experience. And today what I'd like to do is just drop in an image. Let's drop a logo here. I can adjust it, but I know this one is probably the right fit. So I'm just going to let that load in there. And I do apologize because I have slow internet today for some reason. It's not been playing dice, so hopefully it won't be too frustrating. Just bear with us as this loads. Perfect. And there here, and again, my drag and drop capabilities, I could move that here. I could adjust it anywhere that I like. I think that looks good for the moment. Another thing I could do is say, come in here, even after I've built my form, and maybe add another page. So if I go to my outline again, I could, quite easily just drop this second group into a second page here. There we go. Oh, he's not playing dice right now. But anyway, that's sort of how it works. It's really, really easy to drop and drag and create custom CSS in terms of our brand. When I come into a field, I want to show you some options I have as well to customize your form. So I've got required fields here. This is, of course, to make sure that you're collecting the data that you want to, and that the form responder isn't able to move on without submitting it to you. If I jump to options, we can see I've made a required field. I can also do expected format. So I can make sure that the form responder enters the data in a way that is suitable to your needs specifically. I could pull up a date the calendar whereby they can choose from a drop-down calendar. I can also create my own custom options there. I can limit it. Let's say as I'm building my form, I want to change my mind. We can see here that this first name is changing to all these different kinds of question types, which is really easy. As I change my form, I don't have to rebuild from the get-go. I can labeling, I can put them all around in different ways and adjust the width. I can add text around the field I need to, and add contextual help hints as well, which I'm going to show today. These can be sort of static sitting on the page, or we can allow for pop-ups when people hover over the field. I've also built out these examples today too. So conditional rules. This is about creating a good user experience and also encouraging people to finish the form and collect the data you need by making sure you show them only information. So depending on what they select, they're going to see questions that respond to that. And menu dependencies is a similar thing. Depending on what they select, in a little bit of a different way, it shows relevant information there. I can also make any field repeatable. So let's say it could be a file upload field. I could allow them to upload maybe 3 different documents because that's all I would like to collect at this time, or I can make them I can allow them to add as many as they like. I've done a sample of calculated fields, so we can see how we can crunch the information that we're receiving and send it to Salesforce, or whatever our needs might be. As the admin access on this plan, I'm able to also lock different fields. So this would be useful if maybe I don't want my colleague to be able to delete certain fields. I can also denote sensitive data. So let's say we might have our sales administrator in here building out forms and connecting it to Salesforce, but perhaps we don't want our marketing team to be able to see, let's say, sensitive data in the form responses. You can actually hide certain fields, and there's a lot more that we can do in terms of your sensitive data, but that's just one component there. So we're going to see our form in a minute in all its live glory, but I'll just continue along on the form builder and show a couple options here. I'm going to jump here into responses, and again, I'm not going to cover everything because I am aware of time. But here we can actually see all the responses my form has gathered. I'm able to apply by filters, edit the type of columns and information I see. There's all sorts of searches that I can do. I can see the average completion time, the completion rate. This is obviously great insight to see maybe if people are struggling to complete the form or whatever it might be, or they're abandoning the form. I can jump across here and see a more visual representation as well of the responses that I'm collecting. So I can see what percentage of certain questions are being selected, and that sort of additional insight there. I also have the ability to download and send these responses, other than to Salesforce, of course, to CSV files, Google Sheets, PDF, HTML, a whole bunch of options there in order to optimize data that you're collecting and share it with your team, or whatever the need might be there. So continuing along, I'm going to jump to processing here. So here is basically some options for how we work through our form. So we can actually activate and archive forms. We can authenticate responders. Let's say that we maybe have a form that's for a specific event and we only want it to be available, like the RSV period, for a certain amount of time. Sorry, RSVP period. We could also maybe have only 100 spots in that event, so we want to allow for a certain quota of responses. We can create unavailable messages if that form becomes unavailable because of those choices. And then coming down here to some other processing features, which we're going to see live today, I'm allowing the form responder to double check their answers before they submit the form, obviously to make sure that the data that you're collecting is correct. We're going to allow save and resume today. This is a great feature for maybe longer forms, be it applications or volunteer signups, things like that. Maybe when folks might need to step away and collect additional information or documents, things like that, it allows them to come back to the form. And we can also notify respondents who are halfway through a form, allow them to come back and complete that. But this basically remind them as well. So we're getting more of those form responses that you need. Here we've enabled recapture, of course, to prevent spam, and I've enabled our 2-step e-signature. So this is, of course, really helpful when you're collecting sensitive data to make sure that the person that is submitting your form is in fact the person associated with that email address. So continuing along, I'm going to jump into our notifications. So once a form is submitted, we can create a custom message here. You can see I've pulled in some fields and aliases to make it a really unique experience for each form responder. I could customize it with images or a whole bunch of options, or I could simply redirect them to a page. Perhaps once somebody has submitted a form, like a contact us form, you'd like to direct them to your current services or activities, whatever it might be. So there's some options there. And we can customize the notifications or use a default template. And we can also attach a PDF to the form responses that we receive and customize the naming convention there. So that's really easy. Now coming through to connectors, this is a really fun bit. So this is where we see how we actually speak to Salesforce. So jumping into here at the form opening and at different levels, I can obviously connect to our other integrations, but for Salesforce today, I'm going to jump in and see what I've done with our pre-fill connector. Essentially, I've already enabled my dev account for Salesforce. That's really simple. And then what I'm going to do is look up a contact object. So I'm going to pull in the customer ID, sorry, the contact ID from a hidden field in my form. If we find a contact that matches in our Salesforce instance, we are going to pre-fill with this record, which is what we're going to see today. If for some reason there is no match, of course, we're going to skip the pre-filling. And if there isn't more than one match, we're going to use the most recently modified record. And it's super simple. So now I come down to field mapping. So essentially these fields in my form, I just come down here and select one, match whichever field I would like in my contact ID. So I'm selecting that today, and I'm going to save that. Now moving along to the sort of major last piece of this form in terms of sending data to Salesforce. And this is once the form is submitted. So this is going to show our skip if logic. So depending on different variables and the information you receive, you can either create contacts, update leads, create cases, whatever it might be that your need is. Again, we match to any custom or standard object. So for today, when we identify a contact that we already have in our Salesforce instance, we are going to allow that to be updated with these Salesforce fields are going to get their value from our form here. I'm also going to attach an attachment record. But then if I come down here and let's say we're going to see this in action today, that somebody visits our form who we are not familiar with and we don't have them in Salesforce, we're going to create a lead. Of course, we could choose to create a new contact or something else or an account. Today, I'm going to create a lead for our team to follow up with. So using their new email, if there's no match, we're going to either create a new record, update that, or update the most recent. And again, our Salesforce fields on our new lead record are going to come from these within our form. Okay, so jumping along now to our admin dashboard. Now this is particularly relevant with our multi-user plans. The great thing about this is you can customize who within your organization can access what data. This is of course really important and that's sort of the piece where Form Assembly comes in as kind of a security and IT enforcement platform for data. So you can determine who has access to what and share a whole bunch of information. So here we can see in this just demo amount of Form Assembly, all my colleagues have been building out a lot of forms. I could search through different options here and I could also of course come into the search bar and find something that, not today, not today on that search. So now I'm going to come across to our moderation queue. So the cool thing about this is as part of figuring out your data security and your process in terms of launching forms, you can set up a moderation queue. So perhaps management will review forms before they go live, and they can be notified and then they will appear here. Here in templates, predefined content, form themes, and header and footer, we can create content and share across your whole plan in order to make sure all of your forms are in alignment with your branding, but also that you can just share, great themes that you've created or predefined content like I touched on before. So here we can put in default headers and footers, and we can also do that for our PDFs should we wish to export some. If I come here to users, I can see all of my users. I can, as the senior admin on this account, I could go in and see what they're creating. edit their access, edit their role, which basically determines what sort of permissions that they have. If I come across to announcements, we could see, important information that we'd like to share. If I come across logs, the great thing with our multi-user plan is that you determine how long you would like to keep the data, and this is where we would actually do a purge log. So we would configure this within the admin dashboard, and we can also configure it on the page. So you could say delete very sensitive fields immediately after you've received the information, or say it's run successfully to Salesforce. Alternatively, maybe it takes 2 days for your team to process new responses, and therefore you'll delete after 2 days. So there's a whole bunch of options to purge your data at the field level, at the form level, or at your instance level. Of course, this is all to do with data security. If I come in here to user roles, this is where we would actually determine the permissions and structures of each of these roles that we assign to folks within our organization. Let's say people, colleagues are trying to do something that they don't necessarily have access to. We can create a whole bunch of customized messaging around this. The same thing with moderated forms. If somebody encounters, they've submitted their form for moderation, we can also customize all of that messaging. Saving and resuming, we have custom features as well, and the notifications that we would like to show folks as they move through their form and save and resume. Jumping along here to data retention. Again, this is where we set more standards with how we would like to store our data. Jumping into third-party apps, here we can see our current third-party integrations with our instance, and we also have an API and HTTPS connector. So now going back to our forms, that is the main thing that I wanted to show today, and what I'm going to, just within the form builder, I mean, and now I'm going to jump into Salesforce. So here we have a contact record, just very simple, and I'm going to go in, as we do sometimes, and send an email. Now, hopefully my my information is not going to be too tardy just because of my internet connection. So let's just drop in our link here. So sending forms from Salesforce, one benefit, of course, is that we can track quite easily what has been sent out. So what I'm going to do is add in the URL there. I believe that you guys aren't able to see sometimes the URL there. So what I'm going to just do is drop it in another browser and explain it here. So here is the URL from our form assembly account, and that's the form number there. We can customize these URLs to match, your company's name or whatever the need might be. And I'm going to pre-fill this form for this contact. So I'm going to streamline their with us. So the question I'm going to run is, let's pull in the contact ID, which equals Mary Cruz here. So now I'm going to send this form. And for the purposes of today, I've assigned my email address, and there we go. So I can come in and click on this form. And now we're going to see a live experience of our form here. We can see that I've pre-filled Mary's information, but let's say she comes in here and notices, actually, this is my old number. So I'm just going to adjust that here. She could adjust any other information that we map and allow. Now here is an example of a dynamic pick list. So the great thing with this is it's pulling the list dynamically from Salesforce. So let's say you maybe have event dates or things that might change regularly, but you don't want to go into all of your individual form assembly forms. It is quite easy, and obviously a lot easier, to just update your pick list in Salesforce, and then that will automatically be reflected in your form assembly forms. So I've used it for communication preferences today, but another example could be an internal form where you pull in all of the account records for a particular customer success manager. There's a whole bunch of uses there. Now here I'd like to show an example of a menu dependency. So depending on what they select, we're going to see different options here. And here I've included an example of a conditional. So I've set it today just on, new customer inquiry, but I could have set it on maybe other or anything like that. And essentially this is going to drop down new information. I could have done a conditional other field. I could have done a conditional section, all that kind of thing. This is an example here of a hint text. And we could also do one where we just hover over the form. So now I'm just going to fill in this so we can see that this maps to Salesforce. Thank you for reviewing my inquiry. And a bit late here in LA. And now I'm going to jump in here and grab a sample document for us to submit. But let's say at this point, it's a longer form. I need to step away from it. I save and resume. So I'm going to do that today, just as an example, and show us how we can allow users to come back to our form. So now once this page loads, I could jump in here right now and resume it, but obviously I'm going to come in here and receive our notification, which we can customize. So I'm going to jump in here now, and we'll see that once I log back in and resume this form, that it has retained all my information and including my new information here. I'm going to sign up for our mailing list. So I've just tried to create a few options that we can map to Salesforce, be it tick boxes, comment, longer text fields, things like that. And I'm going to select that I am not a robot. Alrighty, now let's go through. And now at this stage, because I've enabled our form responder to review what they've submitted, this is a great opportunity for them to just double check that everything they've provided to you is correct. And I'm going to come in here and complete our e-signature. So now just for the purposes of the notifications again, I'm just going to drop in my email today, and I'm going to submit the completed response. And we can see here that I've customized Mary's response, the final submit page, to the inquiries that she's made within the form itself. Now, if I come here, I can see that as Mary, I'm receiving this in order to basically verify my signature. And then now as the form administrator, we can see that I have received the form response along with the PDF. And also as Mary, I've received a notification, and as the form administrator, again, I've received that notification should you configure it this way. I'll also add that when we're sending PDFs when we're downloading PDFs from our response report within Form Assembly, you can choose to receive those individually. You can merge them all into one document. There's a few options there. Okay, so now if I come across here to Mary, we can see that her information, her new number has been updated, and we've ticked various boxes. We can see here that the attachments come through. But let's go back to this form and do one quick thing. I'm going to jump in here and be a new person that our organization has not encountered previously. So let's have, let's be John. Okay. We're going to have John just come quickly select, and we can see here that's a pop-up example there. We're just going to jump in here and select some options for John and complete all of these fields. And submit. And again, it's going to take us to the page to resume. I'm sorry, to review. John Myers. Yes. Okay. So again, now we see that the messaging has been customized to John and his specific requests. Of course, we could make this a whole lot prettier. We could also redirect your website, as I mentioned earlier. And again, we can see John's information is coming in here. So now let's see if my internet isn't too slow that we can find John, and here we can. So John has come in, and if I have a look at this lead, we can see I've mapped in the information as well. So in this case, when somebody came to this form and we recognized them, we were able to pre-fill their content and also update their contact page. When we didn't know them, we were able to create a lead. And so there's a lot of different uses for that. Now, what I'd love to do is jump back into Mary here and show another example of how we can use form assembly with Salesforce. And there's many. I'm only highlighting a couple today because of time. But in here, we can see I can actually launch form assembly within Salesforce. So the great thing about this is And some of the common use cases might be, let's say we have a customer success manager who's on the phone with somebody who wants to give feedback. We could create just a launch feedback button, which would create a new feedback object or whatever it is we've designed. We can see here that I've also pre-filled some of this information. And here is an example of some calculated fields. So in this example, I've just created a matrix scale, which is very easy, just one of the options in the field options. We can see here that we're adjusting our value. Now, what we could do is actually, depending on these responses, we could create tasks on this. So let's say we receive a score below 2, perhaps we want to follow up with every person, or maybe we want to follow up with everybody and be notified. We could certainly do that. Here's an example of another field which allows the form responder to adjust. So as they maybe provide more information, we can do that here. Here's an example of a repeated field at the file upload level. Or again, we could do a whole section. An alternative example would be, let's say there's an ongoing process that your team has within Salesforce. Maybe once something happens, you then have to go in here and adjust an account. And then after that, you go and adjust the contact, and then maybe you adjust a case. Instead, you could create all of that in one form assembly form to be used internally and do that all at the same time. So another option could be within Salesforce is to create a workflow whereby maybe once a case is closed, you'll send a survey to your customer to review the support that they've been given. So there are a whole lot of other uses here that can be accessed within Salesforce for form assembly. So I think that that's really the main things I wanted to cover today. Ultimately, I hope I've given you a little taster of form assembly, how we can enhance your use of Salesforce, help you move away from sort of in-person data collection to digital. You automate that data collection. There's no need for manual data entry because form assembly can map to every custom and standard object. And above all, that it's really a fun and easy platform to use. You don't have to be technical to move around form assembly and create great looking, highly customizable forms. But also, if you do have a bit more technical capabilities, we have some customers achieving some absolutely astounding use cases. Many of those can be found on our website. So I'd love to just hand it over to you guys and see if there's any questions, anything I can help with. And I do really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Sure. Thank you again, Seychelle. So we have one question here from Erwin. So can the forms, created in form assembly be imported for use in Pardot? So do we have a connector?
We do have integration with Pardo, and in fact, our team uses that as well. It's a common use case that we see.
Right. So as you mentioned earlier, it's possible for us to automatically send out these forms based on certain conditions within Salesforce, right? Am I correct? You mentioned we just need to set up a workflow rule. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's one example of how it can be achieved. So you could create a workflow whereby once a customer success team has closed a case, or once something has happened, you can automate the send off of that email. It might be a survey. It could be follow-up information. Let's say perhaps once somebody signs up to be a volunteer, for example, in a nonprofit organization, you could automate that they receive an email with a form where they can load a bunch of resources, things like that. So there's certainly, yes, a whole lot of use cases that you can achieve with workflows within Salesforce.
All right. I think that's it for the questions.
I have a question.
Yes. Hey, yes.
I'm just curious. Is it Lightning ready?
Yes, we do. We integrate with both Salesforce Classic and Lightning. So today I was in Classic, but certainly I could be in Lightning, absolutely. And many of my team members do use Lightning.
And do you offer free trial?
We do. So we have 2-week free trials. Depending on your needs, we have a variety of different forms. We have single-use forms and single-user forms. And then we also have plans that allow for multiple users, as I mentioned and touched on today. But yeah, both of those we can provide free trials for, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah, because most of our audience are Salesforce admins, so they might need to try it first.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely welcome and encourage everyone to jump on the website. You'll see there that there is our free trial link. We've also got information to download regarding Salesforce. I work with a lot of Salesforce admins, and our team having such a close relationship with Salesforce, we do have use cases there that you might not have encountered before as well. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of resources and free trials available on the website.
All right, one last question here. How do you handle clients with data residency requirements?
Yes, so we have that a lot. We do provide data residency around the world. We do have a couple different options within we also host out of Australia. Of course, the US is kind of our standard hosting option, and for our single user plans, unfortunately, because they're basically multi-tenant plans, like how Salesforce is configured, those plans are US data hosted. However, if you move to a multi-user plan where, let's say, you have 3 users in your organization that have access to form assembly, you can select where your data is hosted out of the AWS options available.
All right, great. So I think that's it for this part then. Thank you again, Seychelles, for sponsoring this event then.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Right.
Lovely to connect with you all. Thank you, Joey. Thanks, Neil.
All right, thank you. Neil, take it
Bye.
away.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Seisha. Yeah, so before we end, we just have to announce some stuff. And then we will gonna draw a gift card. All right. Our upcoming event, it will be on, is that July 25, Joey? July 25. You're on mute.
Yes, currently the tentative date is July 25 for the Trailhead X global gathering.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a recap of what will happen on June 25. By the way, guys, if you have time, go to trailheadx.com, register, and attend some sessions. I personally recommend you to attend the keynote session if you don't have much time, because it will start at 12 midnight here in the Philippines because it's in the US. So yeah, if you can register and attend some of the sessions, that will be great. But we will have a recap on July 25. That's 1 month after. We will have some speakers from the community. So it will be a 2-hour event. We will announce all the details maybe first week of July. And then we will also, aside from the Salesforce MVP series, please watch out for our Salesforce Champion series as well. It will start next month, and we will also announce the details next month as well. All right. Now, before we end this session, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So we will give away $50 gift card. But the caveat is the gift card will not be for you. So you will if your name will be chosen here on this wheel, you will have a chance to select one nonprofit organization here on this website, globalgiving.org. So I personally recommend, of course, you donate it to an organization here in the Philippines. So an organization that is close to your advocacy. So if their advocacy matches yours, then that would be great. So there are groups here who are supporting giving books to children, something like that. And then there are also COVID-19 emergency response, something like that. So, so the process is we will choose a name, 2 names here, and then you will go to those 2 people who will be chosen. Will go to this website and then let us know what's the name of the nonprofit organization that you would like to donate to. All right. Okay. So the first one.
Just need to get your email.
Yeah, by the way, if you're not here, we will not.
We'll just draw it again.
Kevin, are you on the call? Ay, wala. It's not here. Sorry.
Let's see, go.
Paulo Hernandez. Are you on the call?
No.
Wala din. Wala sila lahat. Okay, let's give away one certification voucher na lang muna. Okay, we will only give one certification voucher for today. So I hope yung mapili nandito sa call. Kimi, are you here? Wala din, wala sila lahat.
Kimi, sayang.
Dito ba si Kimi?
No.
Ay, wala.
No.
Oh, next. Sorry, Kimi.
Thank you.
Ay, sorry, Ronald. Di ba nanalo ka, Ronald, last time? Hindi na ba si Ronald?
Wala.
Wala.
Wala din siya. Sorry. Ano ba yan? Ba't wala lahat? Sorry. Pampatagan. Demi Rose. Wala din.
Karen.
Ala, ano ba yan? Hindi na sila nakapag-antay.